request Mr. Eon Ross to take on to present. Mr. Eon Ross founded the Pavilion Water, Pavilion Renewables, the utility of the future and today. He heads the Sustainable Solutions Pavilion Renewables from the UK. He kicked off his career from the oil and mining industry and moved to energy and water industry today. Is there a link between renewables and clean water? What is the nexus between energy, food, and water? Let's find out from the great master himself, Mr. Jan Ross, with his presentation titled Alternative Energy and Water Recycling, Only Viable Path to Energy and Food Security. Mr. Jan Ross, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for a rather welcoming, great introduction. I wouldn't call it the master of all. I think we're all at a stage where we're learning, understanding, which is quite complicated because every step forward gives you new challenges. And I've got a couple of notes here from previous speakers. I think there's definite solutions as we start working towards getting everything in the right place and the right way. Right, let me just pull up my PowerPoint presentation here. And now it doesn't want to open up. Where's my? 1 second, gentlemen. I think I've got the same issue as Dominic, that my screen share doesn't want to work at the moment. Let's just see if we can fix this Apple problem. Vivek, yes, if you wouldn't mind sharing yours, it's something that's going on with Mac. There we go, much easier. Right, yes, we can start running the presentation. So if we can move to the first slide there. I thought we'll start just by just getting a couple of things out of the way. What is very important is, and Mr. Dominic McPollen and some of the other speakers yesterday, Dr. Misra said the same. I mean, climate change is a real thing. Doesn't matter what your opinion of the cause is, doesn't matter how you see it. It's something that's happening. And therefore, again, I'll refer to Mr. McPollen's formula. We need change. So we need to start working on the other side of the algorithm pretty quickly to make sure we can get that change. What we've learned from the past years, this pandemic has highlighted a lot of the vulnerabilities and a lot of the risks we have in our society as well. When our status quo moved a couple of steps to the left or to the right, depending on how you want to see it. So we definitely need to acknowledge that it's a great time to actually address these vulnerabilities as well. I would like to add as well, which I think, and there was, sorry, I can't remember the lady's name who presented this, talked about the battery systems and also the gentleman about electric cars. It's good, great and well, but if you just assess your own family on a daily basis, you'll notice that we've become electricity mad. Everything that we now has to be powered somehow, some way. And it's another challenge that's just again being presented to us. I remember clearly the presentation from EY yesterday, and that highlighted their risk, their demand. I know, Vivek, you actually work with them, you understand the complexities of it. But because everything we now have is not driven by people pedaling their bikes, is now electric bikes, because we just have this need for electricity, is becoming a big problem. And this has got a direct effect on our food production, because obviously everything needs to become more economical. The gentleman spoke about electric cars. We know that diesel production, diesel refineries being shut down around the world at the moment. I used to build them. Now nobody builds new ones at the moment. But there's a consequence, because the demand for diesel is less. Therefore, the business case for a diesel refinery is less, and that's going to have an impact on our energy that we can use for food production as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? Simply put, water plus energy equals life. And if we want to eat, we need those two elements. We can't do the one or the other. Remove any one of these elements and we've got famine. Make any of these elements too expensive and it's a negative force on the life as well. So we definitely need to address these things very quickly. Next slide, please. The biggest challenge, and I do apologize if I offend any farmers in the audience or in the world, but our perception of a farmer is still somebody with a tractor. And that's probably the single biggest problem, because everybody that I've spoken to over the years who wants to get into agriculture is asking when he can have a tractor. And that is the wrong thing. Farming has to move into a new technology as well. We need to start looking at local production. We need to start looking at better efficiency. And we need to start remembering where food comes from. And if we start moving a little bit away from the mass-produced food and the cheap economies that currently produce this food, then we can start having localized food, localized structures, and we can actually start removing some of the risk that we talked about in the beginning. Next slide, please. Oh, there's a spelling mistake. I do apologize. While we go down this path, we should also be very honest about a couple of things in renewable energy. It's far from perfect at the moment. It's not the ultimate solution. We currently run a test farm, which a lot of the data comes from, which is, I would say, 98% off the grid, or carbon free. We do have a diesel generator when there's really no sun, wind, or anything else. We can still power everything up. So it's not the ultimate solution yet. Renewable energy completely depends on the environment. It doesn't work for everybody everywhere. So we need to look at how we configure the energy storage, which again was a big conversation yesterday and today, and how it sticks together. We need to start changing people's habits. District cooling, I had in the presentation before, Mr. McPollan presented it, but it is a big thing. LED lighting, I know he was actively working on that. Building insulation, there's so many things that actually, so you can have the benefit of more energy, of this energy demand that we create, but you need to live the consequence, so other things has to change as well. And then more importantly, recycling to date is more of a social guilt than an actual action. People drive up to the bins to throw their bottles in a recycling bin, but they're still quite happy to let all the water run into the ocean. They're still quite happy to dump whatever they can in the ocean. And I saw a very interesting comment, and I was thinking how I'll incorporate in this presentation. It's a report on New Zealand's quality of water, and New Zealand has got quite a big issue with the quality of their rivers and their systems because of what agriculture specifically is dumping into the water. And one of the farmers in this news piece said, well, you can choose either have farming or have water. Well, he's wrong. You can have both farming and water. You just need to take care of both. So we really need to move from this social idea of recycling to actually see the beneficial aspects of that and the value it contributes to everybody. And of course, we produce way more waste than we could ever process. That's just the attitude of the world at the moment. Every time you buy a packet of tomatoes, it comes with 2 layers of plastic and some more and some more. And really, we need to start pushing more on the things that is actually doable, including the real problems of energy and water, and not just see recycling as taking your bottles to a recycling center and getting your plastic recycled. Water and energy is way, way more important. Next slide, please. Again, our food risk is not local, and that's a very big thing. And going back to the comment I made, this is actually a slide or a picture from DEFRA, what just shows you what happens in the world with everything that is dumped in rivers in the moment, washing down. And I'm going to make a very important point in one of the next slides that is relevant to this, but this all presents quite a significant risk to us. This all has a result in human health. that we need to consider. This all actually affects our ability to get the produce we want. And we should consider that whatever farmers spray in the US or Japan or South Africa on their crops will find our way into the oceans and probably to us as well. And even though there's legislation that try to limit this, it doesn't limit, it limits to the individual doses, not actually the collective. And the presumption that things would just dissolve into this massive ocean, it doesn't quite work like that. So we need to be very careful what we do with wastewater as well in the world in terms of preserving it, because it's affecting the clean water as well. In context, if you look, and again, this is a copy from DEFRA, some of the biocides take up to 113 days to actually meet their half-life. That means the time they degrade in the soil. If you take the water flow through certain regions, in 113 days, we will find that water back into our own system again. In water columns, it goes a little bit faster, but you get a half-life and another half-life. It takes a long time for these things to disappear, and especially in a place like Bahrain, where runoffs of this will very quickly be pushed down to where we have our suction points for desalination. This poses a real risk to us if we don't start managing the problem. Next slide, please. So here comes the real story. This paradise, this is actually Barbary Beach in Freeport, Grand Bahama. Looks beautiful, looks fantastic. If we go to the next slide, that's the other side of the beach. There's an oil tank storage facility. It's got 4 lakes with about 120,000 cubic meters of oil that's sitting on the ground, literally the other side of the beach. If you were to look on Google Maps, you'll see how close it is. So we are starting to slowly encroach on paradise, and we are putting at risk everything we want to do in terms of preserving the environment, and also then in terms of our own food production, because all those toxins will find its way in. Next slide, please. So, quick introduction. I'm Ian Roos. I'm the CEO of Pavilion Renewables. I'm an engineer, scientist, and advocate for change. I'm a father of 2 with some serious concern of what's going to happen in the future. We really need to look at how we're going to do things. As a species, we've created significant dependencies on certain things, and the younger generations can't quite imagine living without it. So it's not a question of deciding we're going to stop driving cars tomorrow or turning all the lights off, because people are not used to it. We are so dependent on the ability to charge our phones. We are so dependent on the nice packaging for everything we get. We are so used to just opening the tap and the water comes out. And we very seldom question the tremendous effort to make this possible. And we never measure the consequence of our actions. So it is quite important that we move this forward and then ask and explain some specific questions and answers. So can we move to the next one? This is a photo that I took from the Tigris River in northern Iraq. This is water that is washing straight down into the actual Gulf. So if anybody in the Gulf says they don't see the contamination, it's coming in fast and furious. And what we need to, and it's a very big point to make, people say, well, they don't like recycled water because of what's in it. Well, I can tell you what's in it already when it comes to the ocean. And we're already drinking recycled water, because all those contaminants that wash down from all these rivers is what we currently see slowly but surely coming into our water systems here, which means it has to be removed by the processing plants. So we should very quickly get over the idea that we're not drinking recycled water. We mostly are drinking recycled water already. And for that reason, it's an excellent source we can use for other things as well. Next slide, please. Well, that's a conclusion. We're already drinking recycled water. So let's just get over that phobia and understand how important it is that water is critical, and we cannot avoid that. Recycling water using renewable energy, it's a very important part of it. Right in the beginning, I mentioned that if we take the equation water plus energy equals life, and if you start affecting the quality of that commodity, then you start affecting life. Unless we actually start generating more water with recycled water with renewable energy, we're not going to be able to sustain that equation. It's going to start impacting life in a great way. Next slide, please. Water is the lifeblood of everything we do. If we not do reduce the impact on our water resources, become a commodity. When water becomes a commodity, and there's countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia that already experience that, that ends up you have to sell your water to the highest bidder. And that basic human right that we have in terms of the UN charters of water being a basic human right will effectively disappear. The value of recycled water is not only life, but it's reduced energy, it's reduced waste. We remove something out of the environmental cycle that's got a significant impact. And it's one of the only variables we can currently control that can drive economic growth, ironically, because we can push that cost down while every other cost goes up. Next slide, please.
Jon, can you conclude in 4 minutes?
Yes, I'm going to try and rush through the last bits. So we're just going to some data. So the most important parts, I don't need to run through all the data. I think everybody has seen this. This is published data from the EU, how much water is consumed or how much energy is consumed to create a cubic meter of water. If you compare it with what we do at the moment, we've got about 0.2 kilowatt per cubic meter of water. If we do it right with solar and wind, our reject rate is just the waste, and we can turn that waste into energy as well. So that will even be less. Zero discharge in the ocean, and we can actually convert whatever waste we generate to something of value as well. Next slide, please. There's a reason we need to do this. Again, this is a study that was done locally that shows you how the discharge is affecting the area. Very little comes into the Gulf, a lot stays in the Gulf effectively. So we've got a lot of water return. So effectively, we've got quite a concentration of contaminants and salt buildup in the Gulf that we need to address. And again, by simply starting to recycle water for things like agriculture, we can start to address this problem quite quickly. Next slide, please. There's many challenges. There's many things inside the water. If anybody ever comes to our laboratory, I'm welcome to show you what's inside water. We need to make sure that we kill that. So we need to make sure the technology is there to make sure that we handle that in the right way as well. Next slide, please. If we do it right, we can produce some fantastic produce. We can really produce a produce with cheap water, cheap energy, that is local to the market, that's got incredible quality. If we go to the next slide, I've got some of the data. That's our little facility in Salmon City, where we proved our point. Next one. So effectively, it's farm to table in 2 to 5 hours. So, which is a big thing, because if you take into account produce that was produced in Spain, South America, America, everywhere else, it takes about 2 to 3 days to get into the market here in Bahrain, sometimes a week. Because you've got a shorter farm to table shelf or period, you can have a shelf life 14 to 30 days. Because you can control the environment in this way, there's no pesticides, no herbicides, no fertilizer, because we use an aquaponics platform. Effectively, our only loss is about 7% due to evaporation and the outside crops that actually take some. So it's a climate control environment that gives you great benefits, becoming very efficient. Next slide, please. So I'm just talking a little bit in the slide about what's happening. We can jump over this one for people who want to read that. We can go back. This one as well, we can jump over. And the important part is we need to change people's mindsets on using imported food and consuming it. We need to focus them on local food because of the benefits it brings. It certainly can bring a lot of value in the process. Sorry, next slide. Sorry, I'm watching the time, so I'm going far. The benefit of this type of irrigation and this type of use of water where we can remove all the toxins is that we have very, very high Brix levels. So the sugars are good, the tastes are good. The volumes of water we use is recycled, and the yield that we have is a lot better with a lot less water. And of course, all the things we remove as well. Next slide, please. In context, if you take it into account, a little farm like this, which effectively grow the same amount as a 1 hectare farm, it takes about $15,000 to build. It's constructed within 4 weeks. It can grow up to 12-meter high plants. It can carry up to 4,000 fish, what we currently have in ours. And it's a year-round activity as well. Now, all this is possible because, one, we have renewable energy. So we have our energy on demand, and Bahrain is a lot of that. Two, we have the water, and because of that, the energy and water, we can actually control the environment very effectively. Next slide, please. Off-grid power, again, very, very important. We use our own wind turbines, but there's many options. We use battery backup. So on the crew that talked about battery systems, we have a lot of experience with the battery systems we have. So effectively, we can collect energy during the day, and by night, we can actually pass it back into the system and maintain the site 100% off-grid. Now, this is the important part, facts and figures. Next one, please. So this is a study done by the university. Sorry, one slide back. Based on the data we have, and I'll kind of finish off with the slide because we're running out of time, and later on we can answer more questions. But based on the study done with the University of Hawaii, the IRR effectively, or the rate of return for aquaponics, which we use here, where we have our own water, is 27%. For whatever you spend, you get 27% back. Compared to any other means of farming, it's a significant yield. Similarly, if you look at what we produce here and why such an environment and the recycled water, renewable energy is important, if you actually take what we produce, our yield per acre is $43,000, effectively compared to any other agricultural method. So this will actually, and I'll conclude here, Vivek, so I take too much of your time. I think this is the ultimate answer. If you produce your water and you can recycle it and you can run off-grid, you can bring your agriculture locally, the potential for you to actually have a social impact is significant. The saving we can introduce for doing it is significant, and very far-reaching. And there was mentioned about job creation in a previous Q&A session. This is one of the highest job creation methods of food production. Most importantly, I'll conclude with this: we need to teach our farmers that a tractor is not the center point of the attention, but technology is. And if we get that point across, this can be highly successful. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for that great presentation, Mr. Yon. You have done a great in-depth research into the localized Bahrain requirements. We'll see you after a few minutes after the other presentations for the Q&A. Thank you so much.